Hi guys, welcome to Electrical Project channel. In this video I'll show you all you need to know how to unsolder flash memory of a router and flash it. You may ask, why to do it at all? Well, for most of the people the main reason is to repair not working router after wrong or unsuccessful flashing. But here's my reason. Well, all this experimenting started when I decided to update the firmware of my router. I went to TP-Link website and downloaded the latest firmware for my router. Changelog claimed improved stability and bug fixes, so I didn't care about small warning that I only will be able to update to the EU firmware after this. But my thoughts at that time were, why do I want to go back to an old firmware version anyway? Well, I downloaded it and flashed it successfully. But actually, I have not noticed any improved stability, but instead I've noticed that very important for me feature called antenna alignment was removed. I was angry, I even called TP-Link tech support, but they politely said that it is impossible to go back to an older firmware, and that they cannot help. And when I tried to flash an older firmware, I've just got an error. I was really angry at TP-Link, I really don't know why they do it. Well, after a little bit of reading on the internet, I've chosen a very radical way, but at the same time it is a very simple way for me. I bought a cheap $4 programmer and decided to program the chip. For most people it will not be very reasonable to buy a programmer just to flash a chip one single time. But since I wanted to experiment and learn new things, I decided to buy it. Basically, with such programmer it is always possible to restore a router if the hardware of the router is still alive. Well, let me show you what you need to do in order to flash a router with such programmer. Well, first of course we need to disassemble the router. And here you can see the actual chip that stores the firmware. It is 32 megabits, which equals 4 megabytes of memory. But in order to flash it we need to unsolder it from the main PCB. It will not be very easy since I'm going to use just unsoldering iron. Well, let's add some liquid flux, some solder, and now we need to quickly heat up one side and another. And here it goes. Now let's clean it. Now it's clean. Here is the chip. The programmer comes with this PCB adapter for the chip, and I'm supposed to solder the chip directly to it, but since it's not easy to unsolder the chip using just a soldering iron, I decided to use wires. Now we just need to solder wires in the correct order. Like this. And now let's put this adapter in the programmer and let's flash the chip. Now let's talk about flashing. First let's click on Detect. The program should recognize the chip. Now let's choose what's written on the chip. And now goes very important thing before flashing. Let's create a backup file. Click on the Read button and wait. It is a very important step, because inside the chip is stored unique information, like MAC addresses and VPS pin. And you may need this data later. So you need to read the chip and save the data. Now when the reading is complete, let's click on Save button. Name the file and choose to save as type bin file. And click Save. Now with this bin file you can always restore everything as it was before flashing. Now when we have the backup file, we can erase the chip. To do so, click on Erase button and wait. Now let's read the chip, just to be sure that the chip is empty. Well, as you can see, the erasing was successful and the chip is empty. And now you probably think that I'm going to download a firmware bin file from TP-Link website and flash it into the chip. But no, it doesn't work like that. And if I do that, the router simply will not boot. Actually, to make the router work, I need to flash into the chip what is called a full dump. A full dump is a bin file that was read by a programmer from the chip of another router. It is the same bin file as we just created by saving the data from the chip, but we need such file from another router. And you may ask, but where do I get such file? Well, the answer is simple. Try to find it on the internet. That's what I did. I found on some forum the full dump for my model of the router, and now I'm going to flash it. To flash the full dump file, let's click on Open. Choose appropriate bin file and click Write. And now let's wait until the flashing is complete. Now, after flashing is successful, let's start soldering. Well, here I'm also going to use wires, because if my flashing is not successful, it will not be easy to unsolder the chip again. Now the wires are soldered. A little bit of cleaning. Now let's solder the chip. And now let's test it. And this router is working. An interesting thing is that I also have a new MAC address. Well, after successful flashing, I really like the ability to flash the chip with any firmware that I want. So I decided to make this chip easily accessible. I am going to build my own adapter for the chip. This adapter will be easily accessible outside the router's housing. Let's solder the wires. Now a little bit of cleaning. Now let's fixate this socket to the router's housing. I'm going to use a screw. Now let's pull the wires through the holes. And now let's unsolder older wires and solder new. And like always, a little bit of cleaning. After soldering is finished, let's assemble the router. Now let's make an adapter for the chip. I'm using Deep 8 socket. Let's solder wires to the socket. Let's bend wires and cut them appropriately. And now let's solder the chip to the wires. And that is how it looks all together. And now let's test it. And it works. But it's not all. The last thing that I want to show is how to change MAC address of the router. To change MAC address, let's put this chip into the programmer. Now click on Detect and choose the chip. Now let's click on Read button and wait. And now in order to change MAC address, we need to go to the address 000-1FC00. And here you can see the MAC address of the router. Let's change it to something else. Now after MAC address is changed, it is important to click on Erase button and wait. After erasing is finished, let's click on Write button and wait until the flashing is complete. Now I'm going to put the chip into the socket of the router. And we'll see what we have. And check this out, guys, isn't it cool? Now you definitely will not forget the MAC address of your router. And that is all for today. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching. See you next time.